The glow from my phone cut through the pitch black of my bedroom. The clock read 2:23 a.m. I squinted, trying to make out the notification on the screen. It was an email. The subject was stark, all caps, notice of termination. The words, effective immediately, seemed to jump out at me. It was sent by my own father, Robert Sterling, and he hadn't just sent it to me. He had copied the entire company directory. Every manager, every intern, every single one of our suppliers had received it. It was a public execution, performed by a coward who couldn't face me. A second later, another notification popped up. A voicemail. It was from my mother, Eleanor. I pressed play, and her voice, icy and unfamiliar, filled the silence. "You are no longer part of this family, Clara," she stated. "Don't bother coming back. We are moving on." The message ended with an abrupt click. I just sat there in the quiet of my small apartment, bracing for the impact. I expected tears to well up, a sharp pain to seize my chest. But the tears never came. My hands remained perfectly still. Instead, I felt a release, as if a colossal weight I'd been shouldering for 5 long years had just dissolved into nothing. I looked down at my phone and whispered a single word into the darkness. Free. Before we get into it, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from today. I set my phone on the nightstand and watched the screen go dark. The room was silent, but a storm was raging in my mind. My mother had declared I wasn't family. My father had declared I was terminated. They believed they were crushing me, severing me from my very lifeline. They had no idea. They hadn't cut me off. They had just severed the rope that was holding them up. For 5 years, I'd been living 2 separate lives. To the world, Sterling Crest Winery was a fairy tale, a postcard-perfect estate in the heart of Napa Valley. We had verdant, rolling hills, perfectly manicured rows of grapevines, and a tasting room that boasted marble countertops and plush velvet chairs. Tourists would drive up from the city to sip our Cabernet Sauvignon, snap photos for their social media, and post about how the Sterling family was once living the dream. My parents, Robert and Eleanor, absolutely adored that dream. They were intoxicated by the image. They loved being recognized as the owners when they walked into a local restaurant, the proprietor rushing to shake their hands. But being owners means you have to pay the bills. It means you have to have a basic grasp of arithmetic. My parents had no grasp of arithmetic. Their only skill was spending. I can pinpoint the exact moment the invisible shackle first locked around my ankle. It was 5 years ago. I was 25, had just settled into a modest apartment in San Francisco, and was excited to build a career of my own. I craved the distance, the chance to be my own person. That's when the phone rang. It was Miguel, our vineyard manager. "Clara," he said, his voice a strained whisper. "The utility company is here. They're about to shut off the power." My blood ran cold. The irrigation pumps will fail. The vines, they'll be ruined. "Put my father on the phone," I demanded. "He's not here," Miguel said, his voice laced with panic. "He's at some luncheon and he's not answering his cell. Clara, please. The bill is $5,000. It's 4 months overdue." $5,000. At that time, that was every penny I had in my savings. I'd been saving for a down payment on a car, for a vacation. "I'll take care of it," I said, my voice barely audible. I logged into my bank account and transferred the money. I paid the bill. I saved the vines. When I confronted my father about it later that evening, he just laughed it off, waving his hand dismissively as he swirled a glass of our finest reserve. "Oh, Clara, don't be so melodramatic," he said. "It was just a minor cash flow issue. I would have handled it tomorrow. You worry far too much. He never paid me back. That was the first link in the chain. Over the next 5 years, that chain grew heavier, wrapping itself around my throat, my wrists, my ankles. I became the secret, silent financier of Sterling Crest Winery. Every single month, I would log into the company's accounts and see a sea of red. My father would purchase a brand new luxury SUV for business. My mother would hire an interior designer to redecorate the guest cottages. They'd jet off to Tuscany for vineyard research. They spent money like it was water. All the while, the staff needed their paychecks. The property taxes were due. The wine bottles and corks needed to be ordered, so I paid. I held down a demanding job as a financial analyst in the city. I earned a good salary, but none of it was mine. I lived in a tiny, run-down apartment. I drove a 10-year-old sedan. My wardrobe came from thrift stores. Every month, without fail, I funneled a third of my income into the winery's operating account. I never told them what I was doing. If I had, they would have just found new ways to spend it. I just silently patched the financial holes they dug. I told myself it was for the family legacy. I told myself it was for the land. But deep down, I knew the real reason. I was desperate for their approval. I was desperate for them to see me. I foolishly believed that if I rescued them enough times, one day they would turn to me and say, "Thank you, Clara. We couldn't do this without you." They never did. And then there was Julian, my older brother, 34 years old, devastatingly handsome, with a charming smile and a full head of hair that he spent a fortune on. Julian was the face of the Sterling Crest brand. He couldn't tell you how to prune a vine. He wouldn't know a spreadsheet if it hit him in the face. A debit and a credit were foreign concepts to him. Julian's only job was to look good. He'd spend his days wandering the vineyard, posing for pictures. He'd lean against the oak barrels or hold a glass of wine up to the setting sun. He would then post these photos to Instagram with captions like, "Hard work, harvest life, Napa dream." I vividly remember one particular Wednesday last autumn. It was the peak of the harvest season, the most frantic time of year. Our crews were working around the clock. The air was thick with the sweet smell of crushed grapes. I was cooped up in the tiny, windowless back office, drowning in a mountain of overdue invoices. Our glass supplier was on the verge of cutting us off because we owed them $12,000. I was on the phone with them, pleading for just one more week, while simultaneously calculating how much of my own rent I could afford to send them as a down payment. The door swung open and Julian strode in. He was wearing a crisp white linen shirt and expensive sunglasses, looking like he'd just stepped off a yacht. "Clara," he announced. "Amazing news." I covered the phone's receiver. "I'm busy, Julian. What is it?" "I need $6,000, he said, as if asking for a piece of gum. I just stared at him, speechless. $6,000, he repeated. "There's an exclusive wine influencer retreat in Aspen next week. I have to be there. It's a massive branding opportunity. All the big names will be there. I need to book my flight and the hotel suite today." "Julian," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of fury and exhaustion. "We can't afford that. We can barely afford the bottles for the wine we're making right now. I am literally begging a supplier not to cut us off." He just rolled his eyes and let out an exasperated sigh. "You're always such a killjoy, Clara," he said. "It's called marketing. You have to spend money to make money. Dad already said I could go. He told me to get the check from you." "Dad doesn't know the numbers," I snapped. "There is no money." Julian leaned casually against the doorframe, a look of pity on his face. "Just figure it out, Clara," he said with a shrug. That's what you do. You're the numbers girl. I'm the face. We all have our parts to play. He turned and walked out. Not 5 minutes later, a notification popped up on my phone. Julian had posted a new photo. It was him sitting on the hood of his Range Rover, holding a bottle of our wine. The caption read, "Building an empire is a 24/7 grind, no days off." I looked at the stack of invoices on my desk. I looked at my banking app. I transferred the money to the glass supplier. Then I pulled out my personal credit card and booked Julian's flight and hotel suite in Aspen. I was a ghost. My parents and my brother inhabited a sparkling, sun-drenched world. They paraded around on a stage that I had built for them, brick by brick. They ate the food that I paid for. They drove the cars that I leased. But they never looked down. They never saw the floorboards, the nails, or me underneath it all, holding the entire structure up with my bare hands. To them, the money was just there. It was like magic. If the lights were on, they assumed they were brilliant entrepreneurs. If payroll went through, they patted themselves on the back for their success. They never wondered how. They never asked where the funds came from. They treated me like an administrative assistant. "Clara, file these. Clara, call the plumber. Clara, why is the Wi-Fi so slow?" And I did it all. I fixed every problem. I absorbed every single crisis so that they could rest easy in their sprawling house on the hill. I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought my loyalty was a virtue. But tonight, as I read that termination email, I saw the truth. I wasn't being loyal. I was being used. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a servant who would pay them for the privilege of serving. My mother's words echoed in my head. "You are not family." She was right. Family doesn't use you like a personal ATM. Family doesn't make you feel invisible. I looked at the email one more time. Notice of termination. They thought they were just firing an employee. They thought they were simply getting rid of an inconvenience. They had absolutely no idea what they had just unleashed. They had just severed the invisible chain. And without that chain, the crushing weight of their own incompetence was about to come crashing down on their heads. They called me the numbers girl. It started as a joke during a family dinner. We were celebrating my father's 65th birthday at some overpriced steakhouse in San Francisco. The table was groaning under the weight of expensive wine and platters of seafood. My father, flushed and beaming, stood up to make a toast. He loved being the center of attention. "To Sterling Crest," he announced, his voice booming. "And to the vision. You know, people said I was crazy to buy that piece of land. They said, 'Robert, you don't know the first thing about grapes.' But I had a gut instinct. I had the vision. And just look at us now." The table erupted in applause. My mother gazed at him adoringly. Julian raised his glass. Then my father's eyes landed on me. "And to Clara," he added, "our little numbers girl. She handles all the boring stuff for us. The paperwork, the spreadsheets. She dots the I's and crosses the T's so we can focus on the big picture." The table chuckled. It wasn't a malicious laugh. It was a dismissive one, the kind of laugh that comes with a pat on the head. I forced a smile and took a sip of my wine. The boring stuff, that's what he called it. Let me tell you about the boring stuff. 3 years ago, the winery was on the brink of collapse. My father had made a series of disastrous investments in the stock market and lost a significant amount of his personal money. Because the winery was structured as a sole proprietorship at the time, his personal financial ruin was about to drag the entire business down with him. We desperately needed a line of credit. We needed $150,000 to upgrade our fermentation tanks. Without the upgrade, we couldn't process the upcoming harvest. The business would be finished. I practically had to drag my father to the bank. We sat across the desk from a loan officer named Mr. Peterson. He scanned my father's credit report, his brow furrowed. He then looked at the winery's tax returns, which were a complete disaster because my father refused to spend money on a competent accountant. "I'm sorry, Robert," Mr. Peterson said finally. "The bank can't approve this loan. Your risk profile is simply too high. That bankruptcy is still a major red flag." My father's face turned a shade of crimson. He began to shout, "Do you have any idea who I am? I am a respected member of this community. My wine has won awards." "That may be," Mr. Peterson said, his tone even, "but banks deal in numbers, not accolades." My father shot up from his chair, ready to storm out, ready to give up. I remained seated. "Sit down, Dad," I said quietly. He stared at me, dumbfounded. "What?" "Sit down." I turned my attention back to Mr. Peterson. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Mr. Peterson," I began, "my name is Clara Montgomery. I have a credit score of 820. I have a substantial and steady income as a senior financial analyst, and I hold significant personal assets." I placed a stack of documents on his desk. "I would like to restructure this loan application," I stated. "I will be the primary guarantor. The line of credit will be secured against my personal assets. I will assume full and total legal responsibility for the debt." My father's jaw dropped. Mr. Peterson examined the documents, then looked at me. He typed for a moment on his computer. "If you sign this, Ms. Montgomery," he said, his voice grave, "you are on the hook. If the winery defaults, we will come after you. We'll seize your savings. We'll take your car. We will garnish your wages." "I understand," I said, not even glancing at my father. I signed the document. We got the money. The winery was saved. On the drive back, my father was silent for a good 10 minutes. Then he cleared his throat. "Well," he said, trying to sound cheerful, "good thing you were there to handle the paperwork, sweetheart. I think I really charmed him in the end, don't you?" He had already rewritten the narrative before we even got back to the vineyard. But the biggest secret, the one that was about to bring their world to a screeching halt, was the liquor license. In California, selling alcohol is a highly regulated business. The state has very strict rules. If you have a bankruptcy or certain legal troubles on your record, the state will not issue you a license. My father was ineligible to hold a license. So, the license for Sterling Crest Winery, the legal document that permitted the sale of a single drop of wine, was in my name. Not the company's name, my name, Clara Montgomery. I was the sole licensee. I was the legally responsible party. My parents were aware of this, of course, but it was a detail they preferred to forget. To them, it was a mere formality. To me, it was a ticking time bomb. I was the shadow CEO. My mother chose the drapes, my father designed the wine labels, Julian curated the tasting room playlists, but I was the one who selected the insurance policies. I was the one who negotiated contracts with distributors. I managed the payroll system. I held all the keys to the entire digital infrastructure. I worked every single weekend. While my friends were enjoying brunch or going on hikes, I was driving 2 hours to the winery to fix a server issue or reconcile the quarterly books. I was the one walking the rows of vines in my boots, checking the irrigation lines that my father had forgotten about. I knew the soil. I knew those vines more intimately than the people who claimed ownership. I loved that vineyard. I loved the scent of the earth in the early morning. I loved its potential. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, it would one day be mine. Not in a legal sense, perhaps, but spiritually. I thought I could earn my place at the table, but the numbers girl never gets a seat at the table. She just serves the food. I remember an argument I had with my mother about 2 months ago. It was a Saturday. and I was in the kitchen of the main house. I was trying to explain to her that we needed to cut back on expenses for the upcoming annual gala. "Mom," I said, "we can't afford to hire that celebrity chef this year. It's far too extravagant. We should just use a local caterer." She was arranging flowers in an expensive vase and didn't even bother to look up. "Don't be so cheap, Clara," she said dismissively. "The chef adds a touch of class. We are a luxury brand." "We're a luxury brand with no cash," I snapped. "I'm telling you, the numbers do not work." She finally turned to face me, her eyes cold as ice. "Stop it," she hissed. "You are always trying to spoil our fun. You're so bitter. Why can't you be more like Julian? He's always so positive. He brings such great energy. You just bring problems." "I bring solutions," I yelled back. "I am the only reason the lights in this kitchen are still on." "You handle the paperwork, Clara," she shouted. "We provide the vision, and without our vision, your paperwork is worthless. Stay in your lane." Stay in your lane. That phrase felt like a punch to the gut. My lane was the back office. My lane was the shadows. My lane was to be quiet and pay the bills. I drove back to the city that night with tears streaming down my face. I cried the entire way. I felt so trapped. I felt so stupid. Why did I keep doing this? Why did I keep saving them? Because I was terrified. I was terrified of losing what I thought was my family. I was terrified that if I stopped paying, they would stop loving me. But tonight, that fear was gone. My father's email had changed everything. Notice of termination. He had fired the numbers girl. He just didn't realize that the numbers girl owned all the numbers. And in business, the numbers are everything. I sat in my apartment, sipping a glass of water. It was now 3 a.m. The city lights twinkled outside my window. I thought about the blue folder hidden in my safe. Charlotte Miller, my personal lawyer, had insisted I create it 2 years ago. Charlotte was a shark in a designer suit. She saw my family for exactly what they were. "Clara," she had said, "you need an escape plan. You are personally liable for this entire operation. If they drive this ship into an iceberg, you're the one who drowns. We need to draft documents that will allow you to detach yourself instantly." "I'll never use them," I had told her. "They're my parents." "Just keep them in the safe," Charlotte had replied, "just in case." I stood up and walked to my closet. I pushed aside a box of old shoes and retrieved the small, fireproof safe. I punched in the code, 0821, my birthday. The birthday they'd forgotten last year. The safe beeped and clicked open. I reached inside and pulled out the blue folder. I sat on the floor and opened it. The papers inside were crisp and cool to the touch. Revocation of personal guarantee, termination of agency agreement, notice of surrender of liquor license. They wanted to move on without me. They wanted to be the owners without the numbers girl. Fine. Let's see how they liked owning a winery that couldn't legally sell wine, couldn't pay its staff, and couldn't borrow a single cent. I wasn't just an employee they could cast aside. I was the engine, and they had just thrown away the key. I picked up a pen. It was time to sign. The word disloyal was burned into my brain. It was from the 3rd paragraph of my father's termination email. "Due to your disloyal conduct and inability to support the family vision, your employment is terminated immediately. Disloyal." I stared at the word on my laptop screen, the harsh blue light making my eyes ache. I thought about the Christmas from 4 years ago. I hadn't bought anyone gifts, telling them I was broke. They teased me, calling me a Scrooge. They had no idea I'd used my entire Christmas bonus to pay the vineyard's property taxes so the county wouldn't place a lien on the land. I thought about the time Julian crashed the new delivery van. He was drunk and drove it straight into a ditch. I didn't call the police. I called a tow truck. I paid for all the repairs out of my own pocket so the insurance premiums wouldn't skyrocket. I drove him home, put him to bed, and never said a word to our parents. Disloyal. I looked at the documents spread out on my living room floor. My lawyer, Charlotte, was a genius. She knew this day was inevitable. She understood that people who use you will eventually come to resent you. They hate being reminded of their dependence, so they try to discard you to prove their own strength. I picked up the first document, revocation of personal guarantee. This was the big one. This was the $150,000 line of credit. The bank had only extended that credit to the winery because I personally had sworn to pay it back if the business failed. My father used that credit line for everything. He used it to buy new oak barrels. He used it to fund the gala. He used it to lease his luxury SUV. As long as my name was on that guarantee, I was on the hook. If I simply walked away now, they could max out the credit line, spend every last penny, and the bank would come after me for the full amount. I would be financially ruined. I couldn't let that happen. I logged into the bank's secure online portal. My hands were rock steady. I felt a strange sense of calm, like a surgeon about to excise a tumor. I navigated to the guarantor management section. There was a button, Revoke Liability. A red warning box appeared. Warning: revoking your personal guarantee will result in an immediate freeze of the associated credit line. All active cards will be declined, and outstanding checks may be returned. Are you sure you wish to proceed? I hesitated for a fraction of a second. If I clicked yes, the flow of money would stop instantly. I pictured my father's smug face as he typed that email, hitting reply all to maximize my humiliation. He wanted to be the boss? Fine. Run your business on your own credit score, Dad. I clicked yes. The page reloaded. A new message flashed in bold red letters. Action completed. Account frozen. Notice sent to primary account holder. Step 1 was complete. The financial tap was now firmly shut off. I picked up the second document. Notice of surrender of liquor license. This was the nuclear option. A winery cannot function without a license. You can't pour a single tasting. You can't sell a single bottle. You can't even ship an order to a wine club member. Due to my father's prior bankruptcy, the state of California would never issue him a license. The license number, CAABC 58392, was tied directly to my Social Security number. I was the licensee. If I was no longer an employee, I could not legally hold the license for the business. If I allowed them to continue selling wine under my name, and they violated a law, sold to a minor for instance, I would be the one facing fines and jail time. I had to protect myself. I opened my email and composed a new message to the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. I attached the signed surrender form. I also attached the termination email my father had sent me. My message was brief and to the point. To the licensing board, I, Clara Montgomery, am the sole licensee of record for Sterling Crest Winery. As of 2:23 a.m. today, my employment was terminated by the property owners. I no longer have access to the premises or control over its inventory. Therefore, I am immediately surrendering the license. Please suspend all privileges effective immediately to prevent any unauthorized sales under my name. I hovered my cursor over the send button. This action would shut them down completely, not just their bank account, but the entire business. The tasting room doors would have to be locked. My mother's cruel voice echoed in my head, "Don't bother coming back." I clicked send. Done. There was one final piece, the digital kingdom. I was the administrator for everything: the payroll system, the distributor portals, the website domain, the email server. They were all registered under my personal email and linked to my phone for two-factor authentication. I logged into the payroll system, a service called Payflow. Tomorrow was payday. Our 20 employees were expecting their direct deposits. The funds for payroll were drawn from the main operating account, but that account was fed by the line of credit I had just frozen. The system was already showing a warning: insufficient funds detected for scheduled payroll. Normally, this would be my cue to transfer my own money to cover the shortfall or call the bank and beg for a temporary override. Not tonight. I went into the administrative settings. I saw my name, Clara Montgomery, Super Admin. I saw my father's name, Robert Sterling, User View Only. I clicked on my father's profile. I changed his role from View Only to Administrator. Then I removed myself. A message popped up. You are about to remove your administrative access. You will no longer be able to manage this company. This action cannot be undone. Good. I didn't want to manage it. I didn't want to fix it anymore. I clicked Confirm. The screen went blank and then kicked me back to the login page. I tried to log back in. Access denied. It was finished. I leaned back against the side of my bed and glanced at the clock. It was 3:45 a.m. The chain was shattered. For 5 years, I had been the glue holding together a broken statue, waking up every morning terrified that it would crumble. I had exhausted myself trying to hide the cracks. Now, I had finally let go. The statue was going to fall. It was going to smash into 1,000 pieces. A wave of sadness washed over me, but it wasn't for my parents. It was for the vineyard. I loved those vines. I loved the earthy smell of the cellar. I loved our team. Miguel, the manager, Isabella in the tasting room. They were good, hard-working people, and they were about to get caught in the crossfire of my parents' arrogance. But I couldn't save them anymore. You can't rescue people who are actively trying to drown you. I closed my laptop, put the papers back in the safe, and walked to the kitchen. I poured the last of a bottle of wine down the sink. I didn't want it. It tasted like obligation. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked exhausted. The dark circles under my eyes were deep, but my eyes themselves were clear. I was 30 years old. I was intelligent. I was capable. And for the first time in my adult life, I was free. I got into bed and pulled the heavy comforter up to my chin. I expected to toss and turn, my mind racing with worry. Instead, I fell asleep instantly. I woke up to sunlight streaming through my window. It was 8:30 a.m. I stretched, a sense of calm washing over me. For a fleeting moment, I forgot everything that had happened. It felt like a normal Tuesday. I reached for my phone to start my usual routine of checking work emails, and then I saw it. My lock screen was a solid wall of notifications, 21 missed calls, over 50 new text messages. The panic had officially begun. I didn't unlock the phone just yet. I got up, went to the kitchen, and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. I wanted to be wide awake for this. I wanted to savor every moment. I poured the dark liquid into my favorite mug and stepped out onto my small balcony. The San Francisco air was cool and crisp. I took a sip of the hot, strong coffee. Then, I sat down and unlocked my phone. I scrolled to the very bottom to see how the morning had unfolded. 6:05 a.m., Miguel, vineyard manager. Clara, good morning. I tried to clock in the field crew, but the system says subscription suspended. Is there a glitch? Can you fix it? 6:15 a.m., Miguel. Clara? The crew is waiting. I can't print the work orders either. It's saying the account is canceled. Call me. 6:45 a.m., Isabella. Tasting room manager. Hey, Clara. Sorry to bother you so early. I'm trying to open the register, but the point of sale system is completely locked. It says license invalid. What does that mean? We have a large tour group arriving at 10. I took another sip of coffee. License invalid. That meant the state liquor board had already processed my email. Their automated system was ruthlessly efficient. When I surrendered my license, the state database updated instantly. Our POS system, which was programmed to verify the license status daily, had automatically locked them out. They couldn't sell a ticket. They couldn't pour a glass. 7:10 a.m., Julian. Yo, Clara. My company card just got declined at the gas station. Super embarrassing. There's money in the account, right? Fix it. I have a meeting. I let out a genuine, hearty laugh. I could just picture Julian standing at a gas station in his designer jeans, trying to look important while the pump repeatedly flashed declined. He probably tried swiping it half a dozen times. 7:15 a.m., Julian. Answer your phone. Seriously, Clara, I'm stranded here. I don't have any cash. Welcome to the real world, Julian. 7:30 a.m. Dad. Clara, pick up the phone immediately. 7:32 a.m. Dad, why am I getting fraud alerts from the bank? It says, credit line revoked. What did you do? Call me this instant. 7:45 a.m. Dad, you ungrateful brat. What have you done? The payroll isn't going through. Miguel is losing his mind. Fix this now. 8 a.m. Mom, Clara, this is not funny. Your father is extremely upset. Stop these childish games and turn the systems back on. We are your parents. I stared at her message. We are your parents. Just 6 hours ago, I wasn't family. 6 hours ago, I was terminated. Now that the money had vanished, suddenly I was their daughter again. Suddenly, they needed me. I didn't reply. I just scrolled through the messages, visualizing the chaos unfolding at the vineyard. My father would be in his office, slamming his fist on his desk, trying to log into a bank account that no longer recognized him. He'd be screaming at his computer screen. Miguel would be standing in the doorway, hat in hand, asking how he was supposed to pay the harvest crew. The pickers don't work on credit. If they don't get paid today, they'll be gone tomorrow. If they leave, the grapes will rot on the vine. My mother would be frantically calling the caterers for the gala, only to be told that the deposit check she wrote yesterday had bounced. And Julian was probably still at the gas station, desperately calling his friends to Venmo him $20. They were all experiencing reality for the first time in years. A new text appeared at the top of the screen. 8:35 a.m. Dad, I am warning you. If you do not fix this in the next 10 minutes, I am calling the police. This is sabotage. My fingers flew across the screen as I typed a reply. It's not sabotage, Robert. It's cause and effect. You terminated my employment. Therefore, I am no longer an agent of the company. I revoked my personal guarantee on the loan because I am no longer employed there. I surrendered the liquor license because it is in my name, and I am not present on the premises. These are standard legal procedures. You wanted to run the company without me. Congratulations. Now you are. I hit send. I watched the 3 little dots appear and disappear as he struggled to type a response. Finally, a message came through. You are destroying the business. I replied instantly. The business was destroyed 5 years ago. I was just the life support. You're the one who pulled the plug. I set my phone face down on the table. It began to vibrate, then again. Then a long, continuous buzz as he tried to call me. I ignored it. I finished my coffee, stood up, and went back inside. I opened my closet and looked at my clothes. On a normal Tuesday, I'd be putting on a blazer and slacks, preparing for a long day at the office, worrying about the winery's finances. Today, I put on yoga pants and a comfortable hoodie. I wasn't going to my office. I wasn't driving to the vineyard. I had an 11 a.m. appointment with Charlotte Miller, my lawyer, to formalize the separation. But first, I was going for a walk. I was going to walk down to the waterfront and watch the sailboats. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. My phone was still buzzing on the balcony table. My mother had left a voicemail telling me I wasn't family, that they were moving on without me. I smiled. "Good luck moving on with no gas," I whispered. I closed the door behind me and walked out into the bright sunshine. My phone rang again. This time I didn't recognize the name, Mr. Davies. Arthur Davies was the family's corporate lawyer, a man who wore $1,000 suits and always smelled faintly of old cigars. He had been my father's fixer for 20 years. Whenever my father got into a legal spat or had a dispute with a neighbor, Mr. Davies would make it disappear. He was accustomed to bullying people and always getting his way. I took a deep breath and sat down on a bench overlooking the bay. The water was calm and seagulls cried overhead. I slid the button to answer. "Hello, Arthur," I said, my voice even. "Clara," he barked, forgoing any pleasantries. "What in God's name are you doing? I have Robert in my office right now, and he's on the verge of a complete meltdown. You need to stop this nonsense immediately." "I'm not doing anything, Arthur," I said calmly. "I'm sitting by the bay. It's a beautiful morning." "Don't play games with me," he snapped. "You surrendered the liquor license? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "The distributors have flagged the account. We have 3 truckloads of inventory sitting at a loading dock in Sacramento, and the drivers are refusing to deliver because the license is invalid. That's $60,000 worth of wine baking in the sun." "That sounds like a problem for the owners," I replied. "You are the licensee," he shouted. "Not anymore," I corrected him. "I was terminated at 2:23 a.m. I have the email. A terminated employee cannot legally hold the license for a business. It's the law, Arthur. You, of all people, should know that. If I hadn't surrendered it, I'd be committing fraud." There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. He knew I was right, but he was not used to being challenged. "Clara," his voice suddenly changed, becoming softer, more patronizing. It was the voice he used on me when I was a teenager. "Look, I know you're hurt. Your father, he can be impulsive. He sent that email in the heat of the moment. But we can fix this. Just log back in, reactivate the license, and unfreeze the credit line. We can all sit down this afternoon and talk about your position." "My position?" I asked. "You mean the position of not family?" "He didn't mean that," Arthur lied smoothly. "He's your father. He loves you. He just wants what's best for the business." I laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. "Arthur," I said, "do you know who paid your legal bill last month?" "Excuse me?" "Your retainer fee," I said. $3,000. Do you know who signed that check? Do you know who transferred the funds because the main business account was overdrawn?" He didn't answer. "I did," I said. "I paid you. My father hasn't looked at a balance sheet in a decade. You're lecturing me about loyalty to a man who can't even pay his own lawyer without my help." "This is blackmail," Arthur hissed. "You're holding the company hostage." "No," I said. "I'm simply walking away. They wanted me gone, and they got their wish. But they forgot one crucial detail, Arthur. I wasn't just an employee. I was the foundation. You can't fire the foundation and expect the house to remain standing. We will sue you," he threatened. "We'll sue you for damages, for breach of fiduciary duty." "Go ahead," I said. "I have a meeting with my lawyer, Charlotte Miller, in an hour. You can send the paperwork to her. But Arthur, I'd recommend you get a retainer from them up front, because the Sterling Crest Company card isn't going to work." I hung up the phone. I stared at it for a moment. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. For years, I had believed Mr. Davies was powerful. I had believed my father was powerful. I tiptoed around them, desperate for their approval. I thought they held all the cards. But as I sat there on that bench, I finally saw the truth. It was all an illusion. They weren't powerful. They were renting power. They rented the land from the bank. They rented their legal immunity from Mr. Davies. They rented their lavish lifestyle from the credit card company. And they had been renting their competence from me. I was the one who made the deals. I was the one who solved the problems. I was the one who worked through the night. They were just tenants in a life that I had built, and the landlord had just changed the locks. I glanced at my text messages. There was a new one from Miguel. 9:15 a.m. Miguel. Clara, I'm so sorry. I have to send the crew home. I can't ask them to work if I can't guarantee their pay. The grapes are ready. If we don't pick them in the next 3 days, they'll over-ripen. The sugar levels are already spiking. This year's vintage will be ruined. A sharp pain shot through my chest. I closed my eyes. I could see the vines perfectly. I knew exactly which block of Cabernet was at its peak. It was the best fruit we had produced in years. It was destined to become an award-winning wine. If they didn't pick it, the birds would feast on it. The sun would shrivel it. It would all turn to raisins on the vine. It was a waste. A terrible, tragic waste. But I couldn't go back. If I went back now, if I fixed this for them one more time, nothing would ever change. They would only learn that they could treat me like dirt, and I would still come to their rescue. I typed a reply to Miguel. I am so sorry, Miguel. You are a wonderful manager. You should call the temp agency and see if they have other work for your crew. Tell them I said you're the best in the business. I put my phone away. I stood up and brushed the wrinkles from my pants. The illusion was shattered. My parents were just two scared people in a big house, yelling at a computer screen that no longer obeyed their commands. I felt a flicker of pity, but not an ounce of guilt. I turned and walked toward the financial district. I had an appointment to keep. Charlotte Miller's office was on the 40th floor of a gleaming glass tower in downtown San Francisco. It smelled of expensive coffee and success. Charlotte was a formidable woman with short, dark hair and piercing blue eyes. She didn't greet me with a hug. She simply nodded and gestured to a chair. "You look like hell, Clara," she said. "Thanks," I replied. "It's been a long night." "So I heard," she said, her expression serious. "I got the email alerts when you triggered the emergency protocols. You revoked the guarantee and surrendered the license. Bold." "I had to," I said. "They fired me." Charlotte sat down behind her massive desk, her gaze intense. "I know they fired you," she said. "But do you know why they fired you?" "Because they're petty," I said. "Because I refused to fund Julian's trip to Aspen. Because my mother resents that I understand finances and she doesn't." Charlotte shook her head slowly. "No, those are the reasons they dislike you. But they're not the reason they fired you right now." At 2:00 in the morning on a Tuesday, she slid a thick folder across the polished desk. "Take a look at this." I opened it. The top document was stamped confidential. The title read, "Letter of Intent, Acquisition of Sterling Crest Winery. Buyer, Vinocorp International. Purchase, price, $10 million. I froze, the air leaving my lungs. I stared at the numbers. $10 million, I whispered. "They're selling." "They've been in negotiations for 3 months," Charlotte said. "Vinocorp is a massive beverage conglomerate. They acquire family brands, strip them for parts, and sell the wine in grocery stores." 3 months, I repeated, my mind reeling. I was running the books. I was managing daily operations. How did I not know? "They went around you," Charlotte explained. "They hired an outside broker and used a private email address. They were deliberately keeping you in the dark." "But why?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I would have helped them. If they wanted to sell, I would have organized the financials. I would have negotiated a better price for them. Charlotte leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. "Clara, look at the date on the draft contract," she said. I found it. It was dated 2 weeks ago. "Now," she said, "look at the section on equity distribution." I flipped the page. Sellers, Robert and Eleanor Sterling, 100% owners. "If the business is sold," Charlotte explained, "the owners get the check. All $10 million. But if you were still an employee, if you were still the loan guarantor, if you were still the shadow CEO, you could have made a claim. You could have argued you had sweat equity. You could have sued for a portion of the proceeds." The horrifying truth crashed down on me. "They fired me to clear the deck," I said, my voice trembling. "They wanted to make sure I couldn't claim a single dollar of that $10 million. They were going to cash out, take the money from the business I saved, and leave me with absolutely nothing." "Exactly," Charlotte confirmed. "They were going to sell the business you single-handedly kept afloat, pocket the money you earned for them, and cut you out completely. That's why the termination was effective immediately. They needed you gone before the deal closed next week." A cold, quiet rage began to spread through my veins. It was a deeper cold than the pre-dawn air. I thought of all the nights I had slept on the office floor, the vacations I had sacrificed, the personal loans I had taken out. They weren't just incompetent, they were thieves. They were trying to steal 5 years of my life. "Well," I said, my voice hollow, "I guess they win. They fired me. The deal goes through and they get their money." Charlotte smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator. "Keep reading," she said. "Page 14, Clause 7B. I fumbled with the pages until I found it. Clause 7B, Key Personnel Retention. It is understood by the buyer, Vino Corp International, that the brand value of Sterling Crest is heavily dependent on its operational integrity and vendor relationships. Therefore, it is a material condition of this closing that Ms. Clara Montgomery, Director of Operations, be retained as a consultant for a minimum transition period of 12 months. If Ms. Montgomery is not employed by the company at the time of closing, the buyer reserves the right to terminate this agreement immediately and without penalty." My jaw fell open. "They didn't read the contract," I whispered in disbelief. "Of course not," Charlotte scoffed. "Your father never reads the details. He just looks at the price tag. Vino Corp did their due diligence, Clara. They know who actually runs the place. They know your father is a figurehead and Julian is a joke. They know you're the only one who understands the supply chain. They want you. They aren't buying a winery, Clara. They are buying the system that you built." I looked up at her, a new possibility dawning. "So," I said slowly, "if I'm not there—" "If you are not there," Charlotte finished, "the deal is dead. Vino Corp can walk away without paying a single dime." I leaned back in the chair. My parents had tried to outsmart me. They had tried to cut me out to hoard all the money for themselves, but in their greed, they had inadvertently triggered the one clause that would destroy the entire sale. "What do you want to do?" Charlotte asked, holding a pen. "We could stay silent. Let them try to hide it from Vino Corp. Maybe they can bluff their way through it." I shook my head. "No," I said, my voice firm. "They wanted to do things by the book. They sent me a formal termination notice. They copied the whole company." I looked Charlotte straight in the eye. "Draft a formal letter to Vino Corp's legal department," I instructed. Charlotte began to type. "Tell them," I said, my voice now as cold as steel, "that the key personnel listed in Clause 7B has been terminated, effective immediately. Attach my father's email as proof. Inform them that I am no longer affiliated with Sterling Crest Winery and will not be available for the transition period. You're killing the deal, Charlotte stated, though there was no judgment in her voice. You're setting $10 million on fire. It's not my money, I said. It never was. If I can't be part of the family, then I won't be part of the sale. Charlotte stopped typing and looked at me with a newfound respect. And the winery, she asked? Without this sale, without the credit line, without a license? It collapses, I said. Are you sure? She asked, her finger hovering over the enter key. Once I send this, there's no going back. I thought of my mother's voicemail. We're moving on without you. I thought of my father's email, disloyal. They had tried to sell me off like an old piece of furniture. Send it, I said. Kill the deal. Charlotte hit the enter key. Sent, she said. I looked out the window at the vast city skyline. Somewhere out there in a sleek corporate office, a team of lawyers was about to receive an email that would detonate my parents' entire retirement plan. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my father. I didn't answer. I stood up. Thank you, Charlotte, I said. Send me your bill. On the house, Charlotte replied with a grin. That was the most fun I've had all year. I walked out of the office and took the elevator down to the ground floor. I felt lighter than I had in years. They wanted to play hardball. They just didn't realize they had already struck out. That evening was supposed to be the pinnacle of their social calendar, the annual Harvest Gala. Tickets were $600 a head. The guest list was a who's who of local society, the mayor, media personalities, and our most valuable wine club members. This was the one night a year my parents got to play at being Napa Valley royalty. I had no intention of going. But I had a box of personal belongings left in my old office, photos of my grandmother, my college degree, a few cherished books. I didn't want them to end up in a dumpster. So, around 7 p.m., I drove to the vineyard. As I turned up the long, winding driveway, I expected to see a blaze of lights and hear the sound of music. I expected to see valets scurrying to park luxury cars. Instead, I saw chaos. Cars were parked haphazardly on the lawn. People in tuxedos and designer gowns were milling about in the parking lot, looking utterly bewildered. I parked my car and walked toward the grand event tent. The silence was unnerving. Normally, a live jazz band would be playing. Tonight, there was only the murmur of angry voices. I stepped inside the tent. It was a catastrophe. The tables were beautifully set with crisp white linens and polished silverware, but the glasses were all empty. There was no wine. The main bar was shuttered, a hastily written sign taped to the front, service suspended by order of the ABC board. I spotted a waiter leaning against a pole, looking bored. What happened? I asked him. No license, he said with a shrug. Caterer refused to serve the food because their deposit check bounced. The band packed up and left an hour ago. It's a total wash. I scanned the room. The guests were whispering amongst themselves, many already on their phones, presumably arranging for an early exit. The grand illusion of Sterling Crest had completely shattered, right in front of their most important audience. And then I saw them. My parents were standing near the empty stage. My mother was openly weeping, her mascara creating black streaks down her face. My father was yelling at Mr. Davies, the lawyer, who looked pale and helpless. Julian was nowhere in sight. My father looked up and his eyes met mine. For a split second, his face was flooded with relief. He actually thought I had come to save him. "Clara!" he shouted, rushing over to me. He grabbed my arm. "Thank God you're here. Fix this. Go talk to the caterer. Tell the guests it's just a small technical problem. Open the private cellar." I pulled my arm from his grasp. "I can't," I said, my voice steady. "I don't work here anymore. Remember? Stop it!" My mother shrieked, pushing her way through the crowd. "This is our reputation. This is our entire life. How can you be so cruel? We are your family." The remaining guests were all watching us now. The mayor was watching. "Family?" I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the quiet tent like a knife. "Is that why you tried to sell the company out from under me?" My father froze, the color draining from his face. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "I saw the contract, Dad," I said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Vino Corp. $10 million. You were going to sell the vineyard next week. You fired me at 2 a.m. so you wouldn't have to share a single cent of it with me. You were going to cash out and leave me with nothing." My mother stared at the ground, unable to meet my gaze. "It was a business decision," my father whispered. "We need the money to retire. You're young. You can get another job." "I know," I said, "but you made a fatal error." I reached into my purse and pulled out a printed copy of the email Charlotte had sent to Vino Corp. "You didn't read the fine print," I said, holding it out to him. "Clause 7B. The buyer required me to stay on as key personnel. If I'm not employed here, the deal is void. Charlotte sent this to them this afternoon. They know you fired me. They know I'm gone." My father's hands trembled as he took the paper and read it. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated horror. "What did you do?" he gasped. "The deal. It was $10 million. It was our way out." "You fired your way out," I said. "Vino Corp officially pulled their offer an hour ago, Dad. The deal is dead. You have no buyer. You have no line of credit. You have no liquor license. And you have a tent full of angry guests who are going to want their money back." My father dropped the paper as if it had burned his hand. He looked like he was about to collapse. "You've ruined us," my mother sobbed. "You ungrateful, selfish girl." "No," I said, looking from her face to his. "I just stopped saving you." I walked past them, through the crowd of stunned guests, and went to the back office. My key still worked in the lock. I stepped inside. The room smelled of dust and stale paper. I picked up my small box of belongings. I took the framed photo of my grandmother. I took my diploma from the wall. I looked at the desk where I had spent countless hours of my life, at the computer screen that was now permanently dark. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt clean. I walked back out. My parents were still standing alone in the middle of the empty tent. The last of the guests were leaving. The generator-powered lights were starting to flicker. I didn't say goodbye. I walked to my car, placed the box on the passenger seat, and drove away. As I turned onto the highway, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The vineyard was a dark silhouette against the night sky. The party was over. The collapse was swift. It was like watching a controlled demolition. The next morning, the local newspaper ran the story. Sterling Crest Gala a disaster. License suspended, guests flee. 2 days later, the bank called the loan. Because I had revoked my guarantee, the bank knew the business was insolvent. They froze all remaining assets and demanded immediate repayment of the full $150,000. My father didn't have it. Then the lawsuits started. The glass company, the label printer, the fertilizer supplier, they all filed claims in small claims court. Julian was the first to abandon ship. 3 days after the gala, he posted a video to his Instagram. He wasn't at the vineyard. He was in Los Angeles. "Hey everyone," he said with a practiced smile. "Just wanted to let you know I'm stepping away from the family wine business to pursue my true passion, fitness modeling. The vibe at home just got way too toxic. Time for a fresh start." He made no mention of the bankruptcy. He didn't mention being stranded at a gas station. He just vanished. My parents were left alone. They tried calling me. My mother left tearful voicemails. My father left angry ones. Then came the emails begging me to come back, to talk to the bank, to fix it. I deleted them all. I blocked their numbers. I wasn't being cruel. I was protecting my newfound peace. Without me there to juggle the finances, the electricity at the winery was cut off within a week. The irrigation pumps stopped working. The grapes, that beautiful, perfect block of Cabernet, shriveled on the vines. The birds had their fill. It broke my heart to think of it, but it was no longer my harvest to save. A month later, a foreclosure notice was nailed to the front gate. The bank seized the property and scheduled an auction. I didn't attend. Charlotte went on my behalf just to observe. She told me later what had happened. It was sad, she said. Your father was sitting in the back row. He looked 20 years older. The land was sold to a developer who plans to build luxury condos. All the equipment was auctioned off to your competitors. Did they get enough to cover their debts? I asked. Barely, Charlotte said. After the bank and the lawyers took their cuts, your parents walked away with almost nothing, maybe enough to rent a small apartment somewhere. And the 10 million, I asked? Gone, she said. Vino Corp never looked back. I nodded. It was a tragedy, but it was one of their own making. While their world was imploding, mine was just beginning. I updated my resume, adding a new line. Interim COO, Sterling Crest Winery. Managed all financial and operational logistics through a period of restructuring. I interviewed with a tech startup in San Francisco that was looking for a new CFO. They needed someone who didn't just understand numbers, but also had grit, someone who knew how to handle a crisis. During the final interview, the CEO asked me, "Tell me about a time you had to make a difficult decision to protect the financial health of a company." I smiled. "Well," I said, "let me tell you a story about a vineyard." I got the job. The salary was more than double what I had made before, plus stock options and full benefits. But the best part wasn't the money, it was the respect. On my first day, the CEO walked into my office. "Clara," he said, handing me a corporate credit card, "this is for you and your department's expenses. We trust your judgment. No need to ask permission for the little things. We hired you because we know you'll do what's right." I held the card in my hand. "We trust you." I almost cried. I worked hard. I paid off my own debts. I bought a new car, one that I chose for myself, not a hand-me-down from the business. I made new friends, people who liked me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. I was building a life that was entirely mine. Every brick, every dollar, every single moment belonged to me. It was New Year's Eve. I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment, a beautiful space with huge windows that overlooked the San Francisco Bay. The bridge sparkled in the distance. The room was quiet, but it was a peaceful, happy quiet. I had a small charcuterie board on the coffee table and a single bottle of wine. It was a Sterling Crest Cabernet Sauvignon, the vintage from 3 years ago. It was the first blend I had created all by myself. I had selected the barrels, timed the fermentation, everything. It was the only bottle I had kept. I opened it, the cork releasing a soft pop. I poured a glass. The wine was a deep, rich ruby. I walked over to the window. I thought about my parents. I'd heard they were living in a small condo in a town an hour away. My father was selling insurance part-time. My mother was working retail. I hoped they were okay. I truly did. I didn't hate them, but I didn't miss the people they had been. I realized that family is a complicated word. People tell you family is everything, that you have to forgive no matter what, that blood is thicker than water. But sometimes, that blood is just a toxic substance that costs you your peace. Sometimes, family are the people who clip your wings and then blame you for not being able to fly. I raised my glass to the city lights. To Clara, I whispered. I took a sip. It tasted like dark cherries and earth. It tasted like hard work. But more than anything else, it tasted of freedom. I wasn't the numbers girl anymore. I wasn't the shadow CEO. I wasn't their victim. I was just me. And for the very first time in my life, that was more than enough. I finished the wine and washed the glass. I was ready for the new year. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you loved in order to save yourself, type freedom in the comments below. And always remember, your own self-respect is the only currency that never loses its value. Don't let anyone else spend it for you.